The Fashion for Good Museum has opened its doors for the final chapter of the Knowing Cotton Otherwise exhibition. This chapter is titled Flipping the Script, and it challenges Eurocentric narratives, but also invites the visitors to reconsider what cotton represents to us all around the world. One of the added installations is titled Elements of Poetry by Nsimba Valene Lontanga, who's with me here today to tell us a little bit more about her contribution to the exhibition. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Yeah. Before we get into the conversation, I always like to ask people to maybe introduce themselves briefly. Tell us a little bit who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So I'm Nsimba Valene Lontanga. What am I? I'm a creative consultant. I do trend forecasting. I'm also a writer, but became part of this exhibition as a designer. So I have a clothing project which is called Libaya, where I reinvent style, aesthetics, codes through my vision. The future is female and African. So everything is made in Africa. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about your vision a little bit more later also. But I wanted to ask you first actually where your fascination and passion for creating came from.
Well, I grew up in a household with a mom who used our dining table as her working spot with her sewing machine.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up with this image of my mom behind the table making things for herself most of the times, often also for me and my sister. Wow. So during summer we would have these little cute dresses made by my mom, and I would see her friends coming to get something made, to measure. So I think it's the image that I just saw growing up, and it just stuck in my head, and I became a part of that image as well.
That's super nice. Yeah. And then you started creating and sewing. Was that something you did very early on?
Sometimes, yes. I used to like steal her sewing machine when she wasn't there, and then try some things, and then she'll be back and say like,
where did it go?
Yeah, something changed here. I had a different color on here, but yeah, I used to try some things out on the machine.
That's really nice. Yeah. And something that we also like, obviously, that's a while ago, and then at some point you founded your own brand, and you're creating yourself now, as you already mentioned. But something we talked about before is storytelling, and that you also have a passion for that, or that we have a mutual passion for that. And I would love for you to, because I'm also assuming that it's kind of the base of your work in a way, I would love for you to tell me a bit more about what stories you find important to tell through your work. Yeah,
storytelling is an integral part of African cultures. Like we tell stories to keep our cultures alive. So growing up here in the diaspora in the Netherlands, I always saw so many African stories being told by people who didn't look like me. So I think it was naturally it became like an important mission for me to tell stories through our own perspective, because stories help shape culture, and we need to make sure that they shape the culture that we want to be part of. And also being part of industries that help shape culture, that give meaning to what we perceive as beauty, as valuable, as relevant. It was very important for me to involve the stories that tell something about my identity, about my culture. So I think that's...
Yeah, and it's also what you said, is that it's also important not just what type of stories are being told, but also by whom.
Yes, exactly. And for me, I think most of the time we often talk about telling the African story, but it's also not just the African story. If I look at myself, I'm African, but I'm also Congolese, I'm also Kikongo, I'm also Mongo. Those are tribes where my parents come from, and those are our stories that are tied to my identity, but aren't often part of all these global industries that influence culture. So yeah, it's very important to highlight these stories so that the culture that we live in becomes cultures where everyone feels that they are represented and heard, and
Yeah, and on top of that, you're also part of the diaspora, as you already mentioned, so that's also another layer that sometimes people forget, and when they're trying to tell a story and then they forget that maybe they're not even like maybe on in the continent or like in the country. But that's also okay and important that all these different stories are being told by the right people.
Exactly. I think it reminds me of Shimamanda Ngozi had this TED talk where she talks about the danger of a single story. About stereotypes. That stereotypes.
Yeah, people only know that one story, so that's what they believe.
And it doesn't mean that the stereotype is untrue, but it's a single story.
Exactly.
So it's very important that we have all these different perspectives, so the story becomes complete. So I think that's what moves me, breaking those stereotypes and making sure that our stories are being told.
You already also mentioned that the vision of your brand is the future is female and African. And I when I first saw, like, you already started working on this like a year ago basically, and when I first saw that you were going to be part of the exhibition, and I also looked up a little bit about what you do, and I saw the t-shirt, I was like, oh my god, I've seen this years ago already, people wearing that. But I also think it's interesting that I think that vision also can be seen back in the exhibition, because the base are African aunties, and that's what you incorporated again. I mean, we're sitting in front of the designs right now. Can you also tell me a bit more about the Congolese style itself, and maybe also the connection to the title? That would be lovely.
There are a lot of aspects to Congolese style, and I got really inspired by Congolese style from the 60s, 70s, which is very specific because the 60s, 70s is a time after independence, and my installation is called Elements of Poetry, because after the 60s there was this Congolese music genre which is called Congolese rumba, which got very popular because it was a form of resistance. It was a music genre that really arose when people felt that they needed to reclaim the Congolese narrative through music. So Congolese rumba is always in Lingala, which is a Bantu language spoken in Congo, and it always speaks about joy, life, music, friendship. Like it's very joyful. It's very light. It's very poetic. Exactly. So during this area, there were a lot of clubs and a lot of spaces where Congolese women and men, of course, would just get out to enjoy life in their traditional wear. So the silhouettes that I'm inspired by are really part of a time where Congolese people were reclaiming their narrative through music, but also through fashion. So that's, for me, also what Congolese styles means. When you look at Congolese fashion in general, also in other movements, like for instance the Sapeur movements, it's really a way of always dressing up as if you are going somewhere, as if you are going to have a party, as if you're going to...
Doing your best.
Always doing your best. So you dress to enjoy life, you know, to feel joy.
And for yourself.
For yourself. And that's really what Congolese style means for me, if I have to describe it in a generic way. And that's also what Congolese rumba really inspires. It inspires joy. It inspires
the joy of life.
The joy of life, exactly.
Yeah, that's hard to like literally translate.
I think in so many languages now.
But that's beautiful, actually. That's amazing. Another subject that we also talked about was sustainability, which is actually a term that is so overused and misused for greenwashing and like often in the wrong context. But you actually told me, which was funny because a lot of the people that were involved in this chapter also had similar answers, that for you it's very much about people and the relationships that you sustain with people. And so I would love for you to tell me more about what role collaboration plays for you in general, but then also specifically for this project.
Maybe it's a bit corny to say, but collaboration is key, you know. I think during our interview I also said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, which is an African proverb. And that's also how I look at sustainability. Sustainability really is about finding ways to create a sense of a community, of a world that is moving forward together, that is making sure that with every step that we make, we all go forward, you know, not just one single person thinking in community, thinking in circles. So also within this process, when I got approached to make an installation, the first thought that arose was, how am I going to make sure that the work that I'm going to make will help move someone else forward as well, which for me meant involving my community, and not just my community here, but also my community on the motherland, the tailors that I work with. It's very easy for me to make some things here because that just takes away so much stress, you know. But I really had to make the things on the motherland, and this time specifically in Ghana with a friend of mine that I met back in 2017, and he was one of the tailors that worked on my very first collection. So it was a full circle also to do this together with him, and then just celebrate like how far we are going together in every stage of life and everything that I do that he does. So that's what sustainability means for me, really keeping, nurturing those relationships and making sure that you move forward together.
Yeah, and I think it's also beautiful what you told me about the fact that you actually invited people from the neighborhood and women from all sizes to do the fittings instead of traditional models.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of these aspects that you basically wanted to embrace. Yeah, that's beautiful. As a final question, I think one thing that I wanted to ask you is something for the people that couldn't attend the opening, because obviously people can still come by and see it, but you choose to, or there was like a meditation for the beginning, and I thought it would be nice if you could explain a little bit more why that was important to you.
When we look at fashion, I think we really need to rethink the meaning of fashion. What role can fashion play? Because at the end of the day, we are all wearing fashion or interacting with fashion because we want to feel good, right?
Yeah, everyone has a touching point with it.
Yes, you want to feel good, and to feel good, you need to heal, right? So I really wanted to find a way to make this connection with my installation, like a spiritual connection. So when I thought about fashion as a way to heal, as a way to feel good, it was a no-brainer for me to come up with this ceremonial opening by my friend Cindy the Power, because she's a fashion professional, but she's also a teacher in a guide in Life Force Awakening sessions. And she's African as well, so she knows the context where I create from, where I'm inspired by. So we came up with this meditation ceremony where she invited the audience into a visual landscape of the origins of my items, but in a very meditative way by using certain sounds and certain rhythms and words that are very empowering, inspiring, healing. I think we need to look at fashion as a tool to spark emotions, to connect people, to move people, to also make people aware that everything is interconnected. I think that's also what that ceremony did. Like, because when you're aware that everything is interconnected on all these levels, you'll also get more conscious about the fact that everything that you do, everything that you wear affects someone else, affects an environment, creates a story, keeps a certain culture alive. So what are you going to choose? I think that was the underlying message of that ceremony, just creating that awareness that everything that we do is spiritual. Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on, actually. Thank you so much for being here with me and having a conversation. For everyone that actually wants to see the exhibition themselves, you can do so until October 16th, 2023, this year. However, even though it seems like a long time, make sure to come by and don't wait till the last minute.